There we go. So welcome. So I called this Unfiltered Unstoppable because obviously I have put some posts on LinkedIn. And it's not just me and my thoughts and feelings, it's other, what assistants are saying to me. I mean, obviously most of my market is the UK, and that's where I'm hearing a lot from. There's been a lot going on over here this year, but I'm not immune to what's been going on around the world either. I think I think I know a lot of assistants are on LinkedIn and it's great. I've got a Marmite relationship with LinkedIn, but most of the time I do love it and it gets some messages out. But I feel like it has become a bit of an echo chamber for this profession. And so we're sort of hamsters on a wheel going round and round and round, having the sort of same conversations, and we get the big hyperbole posts saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then actually it doesn't quite happen. It doesn't go much beyond LinkedIn. And obviously this year, especially for the UK, and actually I know many countries around the world, this has been one of the most brutal job markets ever. And I would go as far to say that it's been even more brutal since the global financial recession in 2008, where I was at a global recruiter in London and saw the, immediate impact of tens of thousands of people losing their jobs, not just EAs. But I think this profession's in the mood for change. I don't think we're having enough debates and really getting into the grit. I think what we're hearing is a lot of candy floss, I call it, which is lovely because we don't want to make people feel down, but also it's how do you balance that with a healthy dose of realism? Because when you've got people putting posts up on LinkedIn saying, do you know what? I've got awards, I've got degrees, I've got 20 years experience, and hey, I can't get a job and I'm going to be homeless. That's reality. And the only way to be able to help these people is actually what is going on with this profession? What can we do to help people? Where do we differ on views? We've got different countries here. So obviously Paul and I, although Paul is a globetrotter, but we're representing the UK. We've got Anel from South Africa. We've got Fiona from Ireland. We've got Sheila from Canada, and Mallory has patched in from the US of A. So it's great. I think we'll get some different viewpoints and what's going on in country to country. I've always said I didn't ever feel this profession could be globalized, but there's always something we can learn from another country, about how people operate and the markets, and if a country's doing better than us in terms of job hunting, then we kind of want to pick up on some of that and pass it on to our folks. So please feel free. I did say you could keep your cameras off or on, up to you if you're eating your dinner. In the UK, that's fine. You go ahead and do that. Food is the most important part of the day. We've still got people coming in. So I want to throw this out to the panel and just say to the panel, we have got a PA on who's reading by captions tonight. So if we can not talk over each other, that would be really great. So I want to put this out there and just be really honest. And I don't know who will want to go first, but what we really think about the future of this profession. I've made some predictions about the UK, so I've crunched a lot of data. I delivered my evolution versus revolution presentation in London. Actually, it was 2 months ago now. I keep forgetting we're in December. But I've made a prediction and I've put it out there now. And I was quite reassured that the British assistants actually really listened to what I was saying. And what I have said, Cliff Notes, is I think the UK profession will drop by 25 to 35%, somewhere in between there. Paul might have a different view on if that figure is lower or higher. I base that on the fact that 70% of our profession is in an age demographic that are retiring out. So we've got the great EA retirement. The young people we have failed to attract to these roles. So we haven't done any talent management or succession planning. And also we've got the millennial and Gen Z bosses who I've been researching with for 2 years who don't get our role and our profession yet. So it's a yet. But I think that we're going through another evolutionary period, and I do think the profession will drop in numbers here in the UK. And now, do you want to go first for?
I would love to. It's like you had a psychic connection. My big prediction, and I honestly feel this in my heart, with everything that's happening in the AI space, the economy, all this good stuff, we need to start looking at this as a completely individual process. Nobody has a map for you. If they have a map for you, they can replace you with AI or somebody cheaper. If there's a map, if there's a job description, if they can give you your job on paper and it's mapped out, you are not going to survive this. So the whole idea is to really become very individually focused. Look at the context you're in, see what value you can add in your specific context, and really start growing your role independent. I mean, I know there's a lot of debate and people are going to hate me for saying this. I honestly don't care what you call me. You can call me chief cook and bottle washer. I don't care. You know what I care about? The salary that pays in at the end of the month, you know? So I think as a profession, we've kind of all got sucked into the naming convention, which has become sort of top of mind. To me, that's not it. And if somebody says to you, I can give you a map, this is exactly what you need to do, and you'll be successful, I don't see that as the reality. You know, so for me, it's an individual thing. It's about specialization. It's about finding your traction in your environment and looking to add value. So that's my huge prediction. That's where I'm placing my bets for the future. If you want to remain relevant, it's an individual inside job. Nobody can tell you how to do this.
Fiona, you want to jump in? I'm just picking on you for the
Yes,
first
sure.
one.
No, I actually really agree with what Anel is saying there because, yeah, I think in Ireland, especially, like I've been on LinkedIn. I essentially grew my business from LinkedIn and made so many connections by finding who was in a particular job with a particular job title. And I feel like there's way more people using LinkedIn in the profession than ever before. That's not to say that there weren't that many people in the profession before now, but there's definitely a lot more people using it. I agree as well from the point of view of the job titles. I think it's what you're doing, it's what's described in the duties is what matters that people should be looking at as opposed to what are the titles, because that can change depending on your industry, your organization, how it's structured, all of that. I'm speaking from the Irish perspective, like a lot of EAs and PAs are being hired, especially in like tech companies. There's a lot of organizations that are like startups and also a lot of organizations that have moved into Ireland, like a lot of the big, LinkedIn, Google, Facebook, Meta, I should say, they've all got their European headquarters in Dublin. So that has attracted a lot of other business. And like, I would think, I'm not a recruiter, but I would think that Ireland is doing well in terms of the EAPA profession at the moment. And like, I'm not saying, oh, the jobs market is huge and it's booming, but I don't think it's had a massive dip maybe the way other countries have at the moment as well. And I do just think it's important to, like again what Anel was saying, like around AI and everything, is our job going to be redundant? I think there will always be a need for this role in whatever shape or form that will be. I think embracing AI is the only way. Like every industry, every profession is affected by AI. Like, it's almost like saying, well, 20 years ago, we had emails and things, but we didn't have the internet the way we have it today. Like when you think about how quickly things change, and like as humans, we're innovators. We're always innovating. Things are going to change. So I think it's about embracing change. That would be my opinion, I suppose, on it.
Brilliant, Sheila.
So, since you promised disparity in views, let me dive in with my very first thought. I've heard the term profession used a few times already, and Vic and I have had this conversation, and I have it with clients, with audiences at conferences. My view is that what people do, whatever the job title, is a career. And I say this on the basis, all of us come to this conversation on the basis of our past experiences as well as what's going on right now. And I spent almost 20 years in higher education, academia, which is a hierarchical environment. Yet, if I was to say to any of the people in the faculties with which I connected and worked that I was a professional, they would look at me and they would say, what are your licensure requirements, Sheila? what professional development do you have to undertake each year? And that's it. It may seem a very small point, but to assistants, wherever you're watching this, and to panelists, challenge me on this. If you are working in a role and you're working with leaders who are accountants, engineers, doctors, lawyers, whatever it may be, all sorts of job titles, where there are strict licensure requirements to maintain the ability to continue to call yourself a professional, they would look at me and say, "What do you mean you're a professional?" So we can be, and we should be, and I've always advocated for being professional in our approach, in our delivery, in the way we work with people, and so on. But I think call it a career. That's what it is. And in terms of where I see things going, Fiona, glad to hear things are looking stable in Ireland. I know that when I first started publishing Exceptional EA in 2013, it wasn't long after that that I began hearing from readers, particularly in the UK banking sector, whose positions, not the people, positions were being made redundant. And so I do see, particularly in the UK, challenges ahead, and I would suggest decline in demand for people in the PA role as it is in the UK and England. And I also know highly skilled, truly effective EAs from other countries who are right now out of work, and some of them have been out of work for months. And in most instances, I would suggest that's reflective of market conditions, of businesses treating what they do as business rather than anything to do with the assistants themselves. And then you balance that with what Fiona said, and I know assistants, particularly in Scandinavian countries and elsewhere, who are enjoying buoyant demand for their skills, their expertise, and there's no apparent reason for them to have near-term concerns about their employment. All that said, I do think there is going to be increased consolidation of roles, perhaps further dilution of other roles. How many of us have seen job postings or advertisements for EAs supporting a team of 6 or 8 or however many executives? How can you be what has been perceived as an EA role with that many people? And it's almost a decade now that one board chair of mine said to me, this C-suite is top heavy with EA, Sheila. And she had been a VP with a multinational. And she thought that was a luxury that would not be sustainable going forward. So whether you are in the UK watching this or somewhere else, I think that with any challenge, including job losses, and I've worked in a city that was much smaller than where we are now, and it was difficult to secure a position. There's opportunity with every challenge. And I think, and I have heard this before, seek out, hone your expertise, something that distinguishes you and elevates your value proposition over other candidates who may be applying for jobs. And even if you're unemployed right now, you can do that with or without expense, and actively do what you can to shape your career to the degree that you can. I think that's really important. And Vic has mentioned before, I know, and I think others among the panel have as well, this is an opportunity. I know that when I first began seeing UK EAs losing positions a few years ago, not necessarily to the degree now, but I know quite a few started their own businesses as VAs. And I think that is an opportunity. I would caution and encourage, from a risk management perspective, learn about business before you open one. Don't learn all your lessons the hard way along the road. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Valerie, should we come to you?
Sure. So a lot of what everyone has been saying is some of the points that I was going to be making. So one of the things that I want to focus in on is specifically for people in the US. I'm in the US. Obviously, I don't speak for every single industry and every single thing, but what I've seen specifically in tech, I came from Google. I was there for 7 years, is there were, as I think Sheila, you said that there are people that's supporting like 6 or 7 people. What now I see in big tech is they're hiring what is called these scheduling coordinators that are based in the Philippines and India and South Africa, other places that obviously cost less than hiring someone from the UK or anywhere really in Europe or the US. So what I say to a lot of people is the future really depends on where you are. I think that there's a lot of pressure on, specifically, I'm just again going to speak for US-based assistants, to really show their unique value as to why someone should hire them at a higher rate than someone in another country who would potentially be, from their lens, be able to do potentially similar things that they don't need someone in person. Now, where this really impacts, in my opinion, is I see big tech companies only going to be, again, this is my prediction, is people who are C-suite, SVP, and maybe a very high-level VP are going to get in-person support, and everyone director and below, if they have support, they're probably going to get a scheduling coordinator or someone in another country. That is, again, one prediction I have. The other prediction I have is if you, the reason why the industry as a whole might lessen, especially in the US, is if you are a solo entrepreneur, again, you're starting out, like, again, like I have more than an admin that I'm doing. My boyfriend that I help him, I'm kind of his assistant. We've talked about, should we hire someone else? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, again, what is that cost going to be, and what can that person do that I can't? Like, now I'm in the lens of, like, again, a leader, someone that has my own thing. And I really think that we have to remember that there are a lot of AI tools that could be actually very good for specifically solo entrepreneurs or people that are not trying to grow a multi-billion, multi-million-dollar company. Those people might not hire someone anymore in person or in their same country if they don't need things that AI can already provide. So that's kind of like a couple of thoughts that I have had. And I think in general that the industry as a whole, in terms of being an assistant, again, whatever we want to call ourselves, I also don't really care what I'm called, is we have to make that seem valuable, not just to our industry. I think a lot of times people go to admin conferences and admin spaces and we're all speaking to ourselves, which we all know that we're valuable. I really thrive in places where I'm the only assistant. I actually try to go to different conferences, speak up in different spaces where I know I'm the only assistant, to try to advocate for all of us. And we need people to just see the value in us, in our career. And I think that we have to focus more on that, is seeing more of us speak at business conferences, HR conferences. That's something that I really want to do in 25, 26, is speak at more HR, even if, again, it's something that is not necessarily a keynote, but just something to get on the lens of people in HR. So anyway, that's kind of my mixed bag of a lot of random thoughts. And some of you took my my first thoughts that I was going to say. So
we've got people agreeing. Now we'll come to Mr. Paul Pennant. So what are you thinking, Paul? Paul, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm not very good with technology. I just want to put into context that I don't see myself as a leader. I come in, I do my bit, I leave. I come in, I do my bit, I leave. Some people see me as a leader, but it's not something that I wouldn't want anyone to listen to what I'm saying and think a leader is speaking. It's just me with my opinion. So I just want to put that in context out there first. The truth is, I was very, very cynical about ChatGPT specifically. Everybody on LinkedIn was talking about it, and I'm like, oh. It's like Threads, and it's like this other app, and it's like this, and it's like, and there's so many things coming in and out. And I thought, oh, okay, I've got an obligation. I have to get myself an account, and I got myself an account for free. And then I did a post on LinkedIn that had 200,000 impressions. And I'm like, no, sorry, 45,000 impressions in one day. And I looked at this post and thought, excuse me, where did that come from? And that's when I paid for my account that day, just to be able to do all the stuff I wanted. So I paid for my account. And I got this award from Microsoft where they're essentially contacting people like me to help them make their products work properly in the future. So I'm in contact with Microsoft all the time. And I was in Chicago last week with 10,000 people. And you could not say one sentence without the word artificial intelligence. Not one word. It was literally impossible. And I think what most assistants have no idea is just how powerful AI is. And I used to sit there thinking, oh yeah, you know, I can organize a conference and I can organize a complex business itinerary. Yeah, that is a skill. Next year, end of next year, people won't be taking minutes anymore. It's just going to disappear. One or two people will, but honestly, that as a profession will disappear. So I think the truth is, as you were saying, maybe 25 to 35%, Vic.
Yeah. For the UK, yeah. Do you think it's
That's-
higher or lower?
I'm working on these products. That's low.
May
Now the
I
question, please.
step in? Paul, I would respectfully challenge that. I can see in many instances the automation working, and I introduced software as a service portal, a portal to my last environment working with the board, and that had the capacity to do minutes for us back then. I do think that there will always be a demand for the human nuance that goes into minutes. There's so many sensitivities that if you can manage it, kudos, but there are so many nuances at in certain roles, certain environments, and at certain levels. Board meetings are only one such example, I would think, where I guess I could call it co-intelligence, a combination of the skills, not just AI, but emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence, understanding the depth of the organization, understanding organizational history, and so much more, that I think I would be surprised if the need for someone a human being to record minutes with or without the aid of AI disappeared.
Okay, so Sheila, when we're talking about minutes, let's just take the traditional approach of minutes. There's a group of experts and there's a minute taker who's a human who has varying levels of expertise.
Yeah.
So if we take the traditional meeting now, it's human-based. It's the expertise in the room. It's the ability to condense that information into a format that's going to be suitable for whoever needs to read the minutes. Would that be approximately?
To distill it.
Yeah, whatever style they want.
Yeah.
What they have now, and it's been out for months already, is you connect your meeting to every single file, every single decision, every meeting your organization has ever attended is now an attendee at the meeting. So it's not talking about humans taking the minutes. They press the buttons behind the scenes, it's all very technical, where they literally have access to every policy, every letter, every disciplinary, every market forecast in the world. And that's going to be the tool that's going to take your minutes.
And that's a great tool.
And then
however, go ahead.
What will happen is these machines will take the minutes and then we'll just edit them to be appropriate to what they need to be. So I would never say that minutes are going to be a profession that's going to disappear completely. There's going to be people just editing the minutes to give it the human touch that's required.
So that's a little different from what I initially heard. And that's the key, is that you need to have someone. It's not so much about the facts, the figures, the policies, and so on, which are relevant. When we talk about minutes, and I know most assistants have not had formal training on minutes or haven't had training for years, and the whole style and expectations of them has evolved. What I'm getting at is, from a risk management perspective, how much information are you feeding into databases that will, as you mentioned, carry forward and so on and so forth, that you don't necessarily want what's said in a meeting recorded in any way, shape, or form in certain environments. Does that make sense?
It's literally a case of setting up a policy in your organization to say that when we have a recorded meeting, we completely delete it afterwards. The idea that the security of the meeting is an issue is actually quite offensive to Microsoft, because everything with Microsoft is about permissions. Every single thing is about permissions. It's not a case of a couple of kids have sat there and written the software. We're talking about Walmart with 2 million customers, 2 million staff. And what do they use to look after their files? SharePoint. If Walmart can use SharePoint for their file management, I reckon it's probably a good enough system for me and most organizations in the world. I am completely freaked out by what AI is doing. Well, I could give you examples, but honestly, I'm working on these products and I'm just like.
But I think what you said there, Paul, at the end was that the human edits it at the end and oversees it, and that's the part that is very difficult for anyone to comprehend, that will no longer be the case. If you have an auto text, you're sending someone a text message and it auto corrects, how bloody annoying you have to keep changing it. You know, it's great for the most part, but like it's the same if you ask ChatGPT to draw up anything for you, you still have to read it and go through it. So
Yeah, but the reading and going through it is editing what AI is produced. So in the past,
yeah.
I would have sat in the meeting,
Yeah.
I would have prepared for the meeting, I would have taken the notes, being interrupted every 5 minutes as an assistant. Then I would get them down accurately. Then I would put it into the house style. Then it would go to the chair and he or she would then come back with edits. That's taking a 2-hour meeting, several hours to do. You know what AI is going to do?
You still need to be the person in charge of it, even if your time is saved in doing it.
AI is going to take the minutes and you're going to spend 15 minutes editing them.
Yeah. And the thing is,
that's quite scary.
Yeah, you're gonna spend you're going to do the review. But if you're smart, you're going to put it back into AI and say, this is the style I want. So it's going to learn with you, you know? So it's also going to evolve and your editing time is going to become less and less and less because it's learning with you. So
really?
I think it's a tool that should be embraced. I agree with Sheila. There is the human component where you are filtering through, making sure it makes sense, it's contextually correct, but that will also cut down over time. As long as you put your end product back in and say, I need it to be more like this. Every time the iteration is going to be better.
You know what's going to happen? You won't have to tell it that. You'll just give it every set of minutes that's ever been produced for the last 25 years. And it will come up with, this is your house style for this type of meeting. I mean, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm working.
Actually, Paul, I believe what you're saying. Many assistants will embrace the idea that they no longer need to do minutes that are going to be edited and edited. But I wonder how many people who are experts in risk and I was writing about ChatGPT and so on 3 weeks after it was launched, encouraging people to explore it and play with it and use it. I do wonder how many people who have sat through a board meeting in a crisis would want any of what was said recorded in anything. And I understand what you're saying about policies. So from enterprise risk management, and there will always be situations where you don't know where a meeting may be held and you may write 2 sentences about it, and that is it about a given topic. So I see what you're saying. I understand it, especially when you talked about editing being, continue to be part of it. I do believe the human element, the understanding, the sophistication, the awareness of what should never, ever be documented. And then people misbehave at meetings. How many of you have sat around a table and heard someone be an idiot or behave poorly? Whatever your policies are, do you have a policy? So I'm exaggerating a little, not exaggerating, because people do behave poorly in meetings at times, but just to illustrate some situations. So I applaud the potential and what's coming our way that way. My point is simply that there will always be a human element involved. And then when you referenced editing, there we go.
Yeah, and I just want to come to Mallory's comment in the chat. I don't know whether have you read that, Paul?
Yeah.
Look, I'm not wearing my glasses, so you better read it for Granny. Okay, Granny's not wearing her glasses.
I wonder what editing versus writing will cause leaders to want to give less compensation to assistants. How will AI impact compensation given the type of tasks it will take away from our traditional roles? That is an excellent.
Mallory knows where this is going with the compensation with AI. I'm not going to say it, though, Mallory.
You're waiting for her to say it.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, Mallory, you
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think a big thing that, we talk about, like, titles don't matter, but a lot of times people care about respect and compensation. And my thought is always, again, this idea of how leaders are going to think about, how do I cut costs? And if an assistant does not need to write minutes and does not need to do certain things even if it's taking a little bit less minutes, because Sheila, I'll say, like, at Google specifically, we were not allowed to record certain meetings. We were not allowed to, again, take certain notes for certain types of meetings, but for others we were. We actually did not use any, from what I know, we were not allowed to use any note-taking tools when I was there, at least for my teams. Maybe they were too confidential, I'm not sure. But again, specifically to that, I'm very curious about how compensation is going to impact all this, or again, how US-based assistants will be impacted in outsourcing to other countries their roles based on some of these tools.
Yeah.
And I find it, again, just interesting that I don't know, Paul, with Microsoft, but I know Google, there's, I'll just say this, when I was there, I would say about 95% of assistants had no idea how to use Gemini, which is, Google's, had no idea how to use any of the AI tools. In fact, I put a lot of pressure on my friends in the tech industry to be the face, because I think a lot of people who are not in tech are talking about a lot of things happening in tech, and a lot of people don't know what they're talking about. And just having been in Google, it's sometimes hard for me to sit into when people talk about Gemini or certain things, because a lot of the assistants, like I said, are not equipped because they don't even know what's going on. Even me, when Gemini first came out, I'm trying to ask my friends on the Gemini team, and they don't even know. They're trying to learn, as all of us are. So anyway, back to the conversation, that was my thing, is I think that this will impact compensation long-term for a lot of assistants.
And Mallory, I think the big thing here for me is the focus shouldn't be the technology. The technology is there. I always say to people, this is like a tsunami, okay? You've got two choices. Put your head in the sand or get a surfboard, okay? I'm advocating for get a surfboard. It doesn't even matter how badly you surf, just make sure you've got a surfboard. So if those traditional tasks are taken away, what can I do in my environment that makes me more valuable? And assistants are in a beautiful place. If you look at the top skills for 2025, out of those 10 top skills that CEOs and HR professionals are recruiting for, assistants tick 8 out of 10 without breaking a sweat. Okay. But are assistants profiling that on their LinkedIn profiles? Are they putting it onto their CVs? Are they walking into their performance assessments saying, I have this skill, and using the language, okay? Because that's how we sell what we do. If you are ticking those boxes and saying, I am hitting these notes, this is what you say as global companies that you are recruiting for. It doesn't matter what you call me. It doesn't matter how I actually niche myself, but I have these valuable skills that you're looking for. And I think if you want to compete with AI, it shouldn't be a competition. AI should be working for you, and you should be expanding your role and finding something unique that only you can do. The only thing we can compete on, innovation, creativity, the human touch. If you're not focused on the human touch, that's where we're going to have that split, where some people are going to fall off the bandwagon. But I think those who really show a high level of empathy, who are creative, who look at streamlining processes, those people will be valuable in the future. Let's face it, we've got a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities worldwide. It doesn't matter whether you're in South Africa or Ghana or the UK. There are challenges. If you're a problem solver, you are valuable. And I think that's what we need to focus on.
So I've got 2 points I want to make. One is specific to the UK. Job titles absolutely do matter here. It's how we get up the ladder. And, I don't think that this whole obsession with the PA pathway here is driving me absolutely bonkers when we've got police women and head teachers leaving their own professions to become EAs that don't come from the traditional background. But the UK, as much as it is a modern first world country, is also quite traditional as well. So within firms, they have it's not a pathway, but it's grading and also when some assistants who've gone out to the UK job market with personal assistant have found it hard to get up to executive assistant, even though that's what they've been doing, because it's a mess of job titles. But they do matter here, and I think especially with this profession, because it's been a hard enough job trying to get people to take it seriously as an integral part of the team over the decades. Some companies absolutely get it, others don't. On the AI front, I've got to be honest with you, I'm more than a little peeved with some of what I've seen on LinkedIn. And, I kind of said, are we undercooking this, overcooking it? What I'm peeved with is people who are not AI experts just going out there blanket telling EAs that everything, all is fine. And that's probably part of the reason when I speak to British EAs and they say they've never even looked at chat yet. I mean, personally, I love it. Absolutely love it. And I just kind of, how can people who are not experts on AI be getting up, giving presentations at EAPA events, talking about AI, and then telling EAs all will be fine? And this is where I'm starting to draw the line, and where I feel quite uncomfortable with it. I would want AI experts, and we had Zach Ratner, who is an American CTO. He was over in London recently. He came and gave a chat, and he said, even as an AI expert, I cannot tell you where this will be in 8 years' time. He showed us what he did within his own company, which was absolutely breathtaking. But what I don't appreciate is people who are specific EAPA expert trainers train on that, but you're not experts at AI. The vast majority of you aren't. Only a couple of them are. And I just don't think that's very fair to our profession. It's not helping them set up for the future. It's not helping them with resilience when there's another recession or downturn. And it's not for anyone. Nobody can sit our hand on heart, say where it's going to be in 10 years' time. I mean, I'm absolutely blown away, and I'm a millennial. I'm blown away with what it's already done and doing. But I don't want these, poster motivational quotes saying it's all going to be fine when people have been losing their jobs already. And what I want us to do is reboot, reset, and get this population resilient again, confident, to just try the new AI tools that come out as they come out and continue to come out. I think they're being fed some falsehoods at the moment. I'm sorry, but that's my thing.
Vic, I'd love to just tie in here and say, it's you as the delegate, the responsibility is yours. Make sure the person is credible. This doesn't just apply to AI. We've seen people train. I mean, if somebody calls me up and says, please come and train on finance, firstly, I'm going to burst out laughing. Then I'm going to point them to somebody who's an expert, okay? Know what you are geared to do and what you can credibly do. I think delegates should be asking more questions and should be looking at, does this person have the relevant experience? Does this person have the background? Has this person got any idea of how this will actually work in my life? And I think it applies to more than just the AI. But I also think, it's very much the delegate's responsibility, the in-house forum's responsibility to really vet the person. If it's just surface level, ask some deeper questions, because that, again, reduces the return on investment. That training spend, you've now spent, but you haven't really gotten what you needed from it. So my big ask here is just do a little bit of homework when you look at these conference programs. When you approach a speaker from external to come into a PA forum, just do your homework.
I just want to add something that I put in the chat, which is there's a very big difference between an AI industry expert versus an AI tool specific expert. So someone might be able to use ChatGPT or Gemini very well, but they might not actually know higher level of where those tools are going. They might not have no connections in the tech industry. And that's something that I've been maybe very critical of, is certain people, again, in the admin community calling themselves experts on things that I personally don't think that they're experts, because I'm speaking to leaders that I know very well in these industries who are telling me, just like Paul, like you're working directly on certain tools, you kind of see it a very different lens than maybe someone else who is just using these tools and knows a lot of other people that are using the tools. So I totally agree with you, Anel. Like, you have to make sure that you really look at someone's background. And again,
I don't even call myself an expert yet.
Yeah, same with me. Same with me.
I know more than 95% of the assistants, but I'm not an expert yet, because it's such, as you'll understand, Mallory, it is just,
mind-blowing.
I don't know how old all of you are. I've never seen anything like the common person using AI. Google, no offense, Mallory, it's great, but Google, okay. There were search engines before. Pay-per-click, Yahoo was doing it. But this AI thing, to actually have individual people being able to tap into it at the speed of replies, I am almost speechless every time I use ChatGPT. And just one aspect. Oh, sorry.
No, I just wanted to say, Paul, you're talking about the impact and the user interface and the response times and the results. One of the most astounding things for me was watching my 65-year-old mother, who's not a digital native, who really is tech-phobic, and she is taken to it like a duck to water. It is magical to see. So to me, I think It's just the interface is easy to use. It really is something we should be adopting. What blew my mind was I was at an event recently in Malaysia. Now, in my mind, the tech, you know, in the East, they should all be organized. They should all know about this stuff. And being in a room with so many assistants who haven't even opened it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just show you. Let's walk it through. Let's put it on the screen. This is how easy it is. And once people, I think the fear and the emotion, once you physically just open it and you see how intuitive it is. And look, people are very concerned about privacy and all this stuff. Yes, that's a valid concern. But everything's out there, folks. You know, I would say, keep your personal details out of it, keep names and confidential info. That's all good housekeeping, but embrace it. Don't hide away from it. This is something that you really need to onboard.
When you think of this career and how the extent to which it has always evolved, anyone who's listening to us who is in the career in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, think of the tools, the tech resources people had then. And imagine, for example, I was there when carbon paper was still a fact of life. And one day I walked into the COO, that's who I supported at 21, and I said, I'm not using this messy stuff anymore. We have a photocopier in that room. And you know, everyone started adopting what I was doing. And if you think of all the tools that came in, we embrace them. And I do embrace Gen AI with caution, with awareness that it hallucinates. And it'll be interesting to see what testing and what regulations are coming in. I expect the EU will introduce regulations before any other government. And I do believe there's a need for that. But just in terms of, Anel, what you're saying about change makes me remember something I talk about in presentations about adaptability. I had left the career entirely when we had the first of our two kids, and I re-entered the career almost a decade later. And I went and got every software certification I could. And then I did land a role at a university college, and people were freaking out. People were, not everyone, but a large number of people were just choked and truly upset that they had to give up all the shortcuts they had learned with WordPerfect and adopt this new thing called Word. It's just, you could feel, and I'm not saying this in a critical way, it was something I observed. I had learned both software courses at the same time, hand in hand. And so I had an advantage. The people who had been familiar with the way they had been doing things for years at that point in time, and it hadn't been that many years, was really telling. And I think there are a lot of people who feel that way about Gen AI, next Gen AI. And so a good approach is to have people who really know what they're talking about. Don't presume to know more than they do know, to Mallory's point, and to Paul's point, that how can any of us be experts yet?
I think it's important to do the due diligence. And like, as someone who hires trainers and speakers at our events, like, I would have a call with them. I'd talk through, I'd review credentials. I'd see what other feedback they got. The only lady I'm working with in Ireland at the moment in AI is actually a virtual assistant, and she also does a lot of works on a lot of creative projects. So she uses it a lot in her role. So I was like, I had a good chat with her, and I verified that she was the most expert person that I could get, that would understand the people that are in the role, as well as the tools and how they. And I just think, like, I obviously work for myself. I'm very I'm not I'm not I don't mind change. Yeah, I don't mind change at all. Like, I would embrace change. I don't, like, a lot of people, they don't like change, and it takes them a long time to kind of get used to change. But when it comes to business and commerce and all that, like, I really just think it should be seen in a more exciting way. And I would love down the line to think that using AI will help us have shorter hours in a work day, or even 4-day work week, or like that it would lead to that, because I think it's key. You won't ever replace those creative problem solving, the human, the empathy. Like, as long as there's not robots at the executive table, like, you know, they're still going to need other humans to support them and to you know, help them with, like, to think clearly and to make decisions on their behalf. You know, also there's so many, like, even in our own day-to-day, like banks and things like that, and you ring the automated machine or bots, chatbots, I'm always like, ask for a human, speak to a human. Like, get me somebody on the phone, because I know that the technology cannot deal with what I need to be dealt with. So I just think it's actually about embracing and changing your mindset from fear to embracing it, adding value, as Nell was saying earlier as well, like being visible, networking, like make sure that you're being seen for everything that you're doing within your role. That's kind of what I
Now, I want to come on to the perception piece in a moment. The only thing I would say about technology is it's great that we're finally getting on the AI bandwagon, but there's a lot more to tech than just AI. And this, you know, just for example, I've been parroting on LinkedIn, and I don't consider myself a thought leader. In fact, I've done the LinkedIn effect on my profile and put not a thought leader. But I've said to the British PAs, like, start doing some cybersecurity. Like, it's in the top 3 tech threats, you know, for the C-suite leadership teams here. They've done the reports, that keeps coming up. And I see thousands of CVs from assistants. Hardly any of them have got cybersecurity on even a basic knowledge. And so I've been trying to get the EAs and PAs and admins just to look at tech broadly. I've been to some tech conferences here, obviously not PA related, and they've blown my mind. You know, I've done Python coding, I've looked at quantum computing, 3D digital printing. I mean, there's all sorts. And when I've keep trying to bring this into the British market, they're like, no, we don't need it. Or there could be some fear behind that, of course. But all I want to say to people is just keep a really open mind. I didn't think I could Python code. But it turns out I'm not that bad a coder. I'm still basic, but I've given it a go, and I'm not a technologist. Well, no, I don't consider myself to be a technologist. And as a trainer, I would never ever go out and train on Python coding or AI. I will leave that to the experts. On perception.
Sorry, Vic,
I just want
to tie in here very quickly. You know, I went back and I specifically went back in my presentations to see when I started saying to people, AI is coming. Now, I'm not psychic, but I am married to a technical engineer, okay? So I am part of his daily discussions about what he sees coming online. So by proxy, I'm picking things up. 7 years ago, I said, folks, it's coming. Now it's here, okay? And I think that to me is such an important reason to not let something else steamroller you. Keep your eyes open, you know, do a little bit of trend spotting on YouTube, short little videos, you know, what are the top tech trends? There is so much information out there. So I just want to tie in and say, Vic, I know how long you've been on your soapbox about this. And mine, I actually went back to check just to make sure, but it has been about 7 years. Sorry, you were on perceptions.
On perception, I think it's fair to say, and I can't speak for every country, but I can for the UK, and the EAs, PAs and admins are thoroughly fed up with this now. So, I mean, I'm 42 in a matter of weeks. Gosh, barely believe it. I've been in this profession since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And, you know, I came into this profession because it was well respected, employers understood it, the job adverts, all the jobs I've been successful and secure, and I'm a weirdo, I've got a scrapbook, I cut the job adverts out. They were really well written. You know, you could understand why people were picking this as a career. Like, it got messy after 2008, and as the years have gone on, it's like we're still going round in this, again, hamster wheel of we need to change and challenge the perception. I mean, we've even got those words on the EPAA website, we need to change, and it's getting a bit robotic now, and people are like, well, what the hell are you doing as an industry? What, you know, you industry leaders and influencers and trainers, you put up these posts on LinkedIn and you tell us that, you know, we need to do this, we need to do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then it's like a damp squid, nothing changes. And then we get to the end of the next year and we rinse and repeat again. And I have to say, I mean, as somebody that came into the profession where it was already respected by leaders, and pretty much everyone. So you could go and sit at a dinner party and say, back then you were a secretary, and people sort of jump to attention. And, you know, I think people are just sort of fed up now. Like, they don't want the hyperbole, they want some action. They're fed up with the LinkedIn post saying we need to do this. It's like, okay, well, let's get on and do it. And that includes, you know, I'm including myself on that. I've tried some radical things out, I've got to be honest with you. But the problem I had is that the British PAs didn't back me on it, and the industry piled on me. Mallory, you touched upon going to HR conferences and business conferences. When I opened EPAA up 7 years ago, I used my savings to get a stand at an exhibition, and two big exhibitions, CIPD, which is the Global Institute for HR Professionals. And literally everybody piled on me because it clashed with the office show, which was our profession's exhibition. And I decided not to go to ours. I decided to spend my own money to actually go to the HR professional show, because I thought, well, I'm an ex-HR person as well. I have got that under my belt. I know how to speak to HR professionals, so I'll go and have the conversations about our profession to them directly. And to not have the backing of, you know, PAs and EAs and admins, industry officials having a go at me for snubbing our show, it was like, okay, I'm going to have to get back in my box now. But I think it's a bit of a missing piece.
Can I just ask, Vic, what was your reaction when you were at the CIPD event? Like, you know, because I've had conversations with HR before, and they seem all very supportive when we're on a call, but then when it comes to actually, you know, booking trainers or putting a career path in place for the EAs and PAs, it tends to not go anywhere. So I'd be curious to see how.
Yes. Okay. Do you want me to be honest here? Because it's going to be brutal. Okay. So I know, because I spent a big chunk of my career working for a global HR director and in a PLC HR department. They were very, very positive, Fiona, the whole time. Like, people were actively coming up to our stand. I've got a good relationship with the CIPD, so we were given a better stand, that we should have been in a prominent place for to be seen. We were getting a massively great reaction. People asked me to come in and speak directly into their organisations. There was some really, really weird feedback, and this was feedback I had to pass back onto our profession here, which wasn't taken well, but I tried to sandwich it and taper it down. So I'll give an example. I had a HR director from an investment bank here, a global investment bank, and he said the EAPA workforce in our bank is actually quite toxic. And I just stood there and I was like, okay, well, can you elaborate? Give me the details. I was going to go all Gen Z on you. Give me the deets. That's what we're saying there. Give me the deets. And he said that they were trying to push through massive amounts of change throughout the bank, worldwide, and that the EAPA workforce were deliberately the only profession within that company that was pushing back, to the point that they actually refused to come to a company meeting as a group. Like, they went into a gang mentality. And so he asked me to come in to try and help diffuse the situation. So I had feedback like that. I had other feedback as well at the time that was, look, Vic, there's a lot going on here. It's a global recession. You know, all we're doing is hiring and refiring. Like, you know, your profession is a little bit of low-hanging fruit, was what one of them said at the time. And, you know, I can't stand there and start getting horrified. I have to do a two-way with them and understand and get to the root of why they're saying that. They said, some of them said there was too much moaning and not enough doing. So, you know, our population would moan that we don't get budget for learning and development, we don't get this, we don't get that. But actually, we weren't coming to them with proper business cases for training, you know, actually showing them what they were going to get back for the organisation if they paid out for you to go and do X, Y, and Z. So there was all this learning, and I took the negative stuff, I took the really positive stuff. Of course, we had some of the HR people who did the usual, you're a rock star, your profession superheroes, which me and Sheena are like, yeah, that's great. Someone even said Mary Poppins, which literally made me want to die inside, but we took it. So I packaged it all up and I told the community, but they just didn't want to know. And so, yeah, I'm going to throw it out to you, the perception piece.
Okay, Vic, I think you actually lined it up so beautifully for me. So I'm going to keep this really short. the perception. I cannot change your perception. We can all manage our backyard, and the backyards will then join up, and then we'll have a better perception outside. But I can't change any perception. I can only do the work. And if my neighbor's not doing the work, if I'm not calling it out or trying to address it, it does affect me. We've got a co-brand. Okay. So that's my very short take in a nutshell. I do think, like you said, we've all had the feedback of, you know, this specific assistant in the company is letting down the side. We've all seen them in action. I think that is also a big factor eroding the respect level. But on the other side of the spectrum, we all know the rock stars who, I mean, the genuine rock stars, not those ones who get the fluffy title, those people who they cannot live without. And it doesn't matter what you call them, those people who are absolutely the linchpins in those organizations. And I promise you, their entire team, their entire management level knows exactly how much value that person adds. They don't need to change a perception. So what I'm actually saying is, if we can just all work on our patch, just look after your own backyard, the perception is going to look after itself. And that's my 2 cents.
I wanted to add that I think that sometimes our industry is our own worst enemy, in the sense that we are not united. I talk to this in so many people who, again, have big followings on LinkedIn. Everyone's in disagreement about titles. Everyone's in disagreement. Everyone has their own take. No one can really get behind it. What happens in organizations is, I find that whoever supports the CEO has so much power, and there are assistants who want to, like, I've supported a big CEO before, but I had an office of 8 other people. We couldn't all get along with each other. And I was super young. I was 22 at the time. So I was not having like the most impact. But I find that whoever supports the CEO either does not want to get involved because they don't want to lose their job, and they don't think that they honestly don't care. They're at the top. They honestly do not care, I find. Or they really do care, and you do see change. Like, I find that a lot of times whoever supports the C-suite has a huge influence on the rest of the company, whether their HR will listen, whether everyone else will perceive
On
the
the
role.
culture.
Yeah, exactly. The cultural piece, unfortunately, whether someone wants that position or not, it usually falls, I believe, on them. And then there was something else that I think someone said that I'm forgetting, but that's my big thing, is that I think that our industry is not pulled together. And what I find that executives will say to me, whether it was at Google or other companies, or just talking to, honestly, executives that come to me about hiring for their assistant or helping them with their team, is they say, there's so much drama and I don't want to get involved, and it a lot of times stops anything. Actually, the other thing that I was going to say is, I think this is why we need to be in other rooms, and why, like, for more than an admin, connecting with people beyond the job title, is I find that, like, for example, many people know I'm Christian. I'm very open about it. I spoke at my Connect group that was for Christian entrepreneurs, and I did a presentation on how to leverage your assistant. I can't tell you how many people came up to me and was like, I wish I had your presentation 3 years ago. I didn't even look at the assistant the way that you were seeing it. I connected with them on if you're a Christian and you believe God sees everyone equally and valuable. Again, I know that some people don't believe this. I'm just saying that in my group, then guess what? Why don't you treat your assistant the same way? I kind of connected with them on this basis of something outside of work. And I find that a lot of times when I'm in spaces and I connect with people, like parents, for example, maternity leave for admins, I think that that's like another hot topic for another day. Is I try to connect with leaders and say, do you want maternity leave? Do you want paternity leave? Whatever it is, you have to allow your assistant, because you're both parents at the end of the day. Why don't you see your assistant as a parent that also needs that? So I try a lot of times to connect with people on a personal level, and then take our role in it. And I find a lot of progress in that way, whether, again, was at a big corporation or just my friends that are solo entrepreneurs. And I think that that's something that we have to do more of, is being in, again, these spaces, whether it's just even being at the dinner table with your family and talking about your job. Like, all of us are around people who are in different positions, who probably have power at their own companies. So like I said, when I'm with my family right now and they're asking me about stuff that I'm doing, I'm telling them about how I'm trying to change this. And I think a lot of times people, again, they want to just speak on LinkedIn. They just want to speak in spaces like this about our career, but you really have to think about out of the box as to how to perceive all these other people. Because I really believe that one conversation, again, in these groups without us all together, can really make a lot of change. That's my 2 things. I think a lot of times we're not aligned. And I think also we have to speak with people and really connect on a personal level that influences how they see us in our role.
Paul, I think you had your hand up, didn't you? Oh, you're on mute again.
Goodness, this thing's so crazy. Now, can I just ask how long this meeting is for? Because it just depends on how long I'm going to be talking for.
We've got to stop in 25 minutes.
Oh, 25 minutes. Okay. Are you looking to have some more of these on different subjects, or is it gonna? So I'm just wondering if AI is going to come in and out again, or what's going to happen.
Well,
really?
I think AI will come in and out constantly. It's going to have to, because there's still. I mean, I ran a training day in London early August before I got sick, and Candy said to the attendees, you know, how many of you have been, you know, playing with AI, and most of them hadn't. So I think it's an ongoing conversation.
Okay, it's just my head is thinking a lot about AI, but I have a prediction for the future.
Okay, far away.
I just want to ask very quickly, again, this is only if you're old enough. Does anyone know the story behind oven chips?
Behind what?
Oven chips, frozen chips. Does anyone know the story behind it?
No.
You don't know it? Okay, you're all too young.
Wow, thank you.
It's older than you, Vic. It's older than you.
Okay.
Oven chips were one of the biggest scientific breakthroughs ever. You've got the world's top scientists whose goal is to make oven chips. So the question is, what did people do before oven chips?
Fried potatoes.
They'd buy the potatoes, bring them home, peel the potatoes, heat the oil up, chop them to a uniform size. And that's when we had people setting their kitchens on fire accidentally when they made a mistake or two. So the idea of how these chips were sold was, once you buy these chips, housewives will have more time to look after their families. Kettles speed up the water, washing machine, all these inventions have been said to make your life easier, and you'll have more time to do what you want to do. I think we know the reality of it, though, don't we? None of these things in themselves give you more time. It just keeps you busier. So I could never see a 4-day week ever coming off working out. 1 or 2 companies are going to do it, but it's never going to happen. We're in a competitive marketplace, so we're just going to work 5 days a week. But I think AI is just going to produce higher quality, better outputs from the people who know how to use it. The second point I want to make is I predict that assistants are going to become automation specialists.
Prompt engineers.
Not software engineers, but there's just a thing called low code where you can start speaking to the software to say, can you start developing things for me? And you keep on testing it. So for example, today I could set up a low code that says, if someone sends me an email for an expense that's less than £10, just automatically approve it to me. And send me an email once a week, giving me a breakdown of all of those. How much time would that save you if you developed that system yourself? Once you trust it, you'll put it up to £15, 20. But we are going to be designing systems that are going to benefit us, our managers, our teams. And because of the nature of our work, I predict that assistants will be automation specialists in the future. That's what I predict.
So does that mean that some of our training, our qualifications will have to change if that is the case, and modules on this stuff, because it's not there at the moment, not in a big way?
I'll give you a quick example. I've been teaching people to write minutes for 20 years.
I know, yeah.
And I taught people the passive voice, past, present tense. I was teaching people the layout. I was teaching people the grammar. And then 2 or 3 months ago, I was having sleepless nights about how to introduce the technology into minutes. And I couldn't decide how to do it. And you know the reason I couldn't decide how to do it? Because technology has completely changed my course. Completely. So what I need to teach people now is, I'm talking about the world of Microsoft here. I need to teach people how to set up Teams meetings. I know it sounds silly, but people don't know how to set up Teams meetings correctly. I have to teach people the permissions that you have in your meetings. I have to teach them all the different ways you can record your meeting. So the reason I had the battle with the course was because I couldn't get over the fact that technology was actually becoming significantly more important than humans. Because I've always taught humans are more important than technology with minutes. I've always taught that. And I've had to change the whole of my course. I still have the human element in it. And in fact, what I did was I took my 20 years of experience. I said to ChatGPT, here's my 20 years of experience in this document. Can you write me a prompt that will write minutes based on my 20 years of experience? I then give ChatGPT a, a transcript of a meeting, give it the prompt, and the quality of the minutes is 90% of what I've been teaching for 20 years. And the prompt is 1 page long, one whole page telling ChatGPT how I want my minutes. I'm freaked out. When I'm on a training course, I'm actually saying to people now, what I'm telling you is almost making my job as a trainer redundant, almost.
But
Wow.
does that mean that you can reach more people with less, if they can do this in less time and you can teach them in less time, can you, like, you might have to change your business model? I mean, look at us all on Zoom in different parts of the world. We were like, you know, I'm not saying it wasn't around 5 or 6 years ago, it was, but it just wasn't widely used.
Yeah.
So if you know, can you reach more people teaching them this new tool? Because it is just another tool.
I believe that for me as an individual, I've still got a place teaching Microsoft 365, which is Outlook, Teams. But I've come to realize that automation is becoming more important than just using Outlook or Teams. Automation is everything. When Microsoft are developing these tools, they're giving you the chips, but it's not to make your life easier per se. It's that the organization can have less staff doing work at a higher quality level.
You
So people
achieve
are looking at
efficiencies, which mean that the role of assistants is going to change, and the number of EAs who support a single person, I believe, will diminish.
And I think that I'll just say this as someone who left Google, I'll just be very blunt. A big reason that I left Google was I had a very hard time ethically and morally dealing with all of this because
Yes.
I put a lot of pressure on my execs. And the truth is a lot of these tech companies do not care as much about these ethical and moral things as we wish that they do. I would say as someone that worked at
Revenue.
Google, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
So I was just going to say something that again, this is not, I don't want to say this as quote, do not put me in the New York Times, but I think Google, as someone who worked there, had the technology a lot, could have launched Gemini, Bard, it was what was called, a lot sooner than OpenAI and Microsoft, but decided to hold back because they saw how much it could really impact the world. And when Sam Altman, who, you know, some people love him, I have a little bit of a maybe different take, is when he has really gone aggressive with OpenAI and then Microsoft. I don't think that they wanted to be the first. They wanted to be out there. They wanted to beat Google. And I think that it now causes big race. And I think that there's a lot of ethical and moral really issues. And I think that's something I wanted to say before is you can hold two things. I am very fearful. I'm not going to lie. I'm very fearful. Now I have, you know, I believe in God. I believe everything will be okay. But I also believe that even though I'm fearful of what will happen, and I personally don't put any of my intellectual property into any AI tool right now, but I also still believe that I should understand it. And I think that that's something that a lot of admins have a hard time is you can fear something and be really scared of it, but also still know the technology and how to use it. So if I got hired from a company today, I know how to use all of it, even though I don't use it every single day. I don't use it for certain things in my business. It doesn't mean that I don't actually, if I needed to, could do it. And I think that's something that I hope that a lot of admins take away from this. And I'm sure a lot of you on the call is it's okay to fear things. It's okay to question things. It's okay to see it, but you still should know the bare minimum of how to utilize it if you need
Absolutely.
it, because of what Paul is saying. I agree a lot with him about where the direction of the world is going, even though I think it's sad to see a lot of
I don't like the fact, oh God, I don't know if I can say this. It freaks me out that I get invited to these Microsoft meetings where they tell me what they're doing, because I was innocent and I thought, oh, that's a nice button. Oh, that's useful. And now I'm sitting in the meetings with the people designing them. I'm like, oh, this isn't for us. This is for management to sell them licenses to reduce their headcount and make their staff more accurate. And I didn't see it before. I just saw it as, oh, that's a nice tool. It's going to help me. These licenses are not for staff. They're for the management teams to create a higher return on their investments. So I'm going to get a little bit of a benefit from it, but the software's not for me.
But it's not for me.
That's
And
incidental.
so to the points, Paul and Mallory, that you're both making, this takes us back to the last question Vic posed to us, perceptions of the career. And I saw Jackie's comment and other comments in the chat. And I know from comments I've read in different channels, social channels, that people think of perhaps some of the people whose faces and names you know from different countries as being advocates for you in your career. What I would like any person listening to us to know is that you should be the best advocate for your career. And no one is going to care as much about where you go, how you progress or do not progress in your career, whether you retain employment, whether you elevate employment, whatever it is, as much as you. And individually and collectively, I do believe there's an importance in understanding the significance of the language we use. And one of us someone else on the panel spoke earlier about, or I think referenced or alluded to understanding what leadership's challenges, opportunities are, knowing how to, and then there's also knowing how to speak in the same language, share the common language. So it is up to any person who wants to build this career to stay in it, whether in your current role, another role, or to land a position in whatever economic and labor market you're in. You are your best advocate. Don't count on other people to advocate for you. And that implies taking control to the extent you can of where you go in your career. And I think I'm guessing all of us on this panel are curious people, or we probably wouldn't do what we're doing. And so we need to be curious and to be learning and to really not take things at work personally when they are intended constructively. One of the challenges I think assistants have is so many give so deeply of themselves personally, partly because we want to ensure people see us as competent and so on, because often you're overloaded with work. But guess what? We're compensated with work for the work we do. And yet, if you want to have admin professionals day and things like that, to me, that was never a focus. And if there was some kind of celebration of it, was give me professional development. And professional development does not need to cost you a dime. Yes, you can invest in good training at cost. You can also be curious, read what your people you support and other people to whom they report, read what they're reading, read outside your environment. And for goodness sake, without ever intending any offense, one slide I have in some of my presentations, the group of sheep I saw, one of many groups of sheep on the narrow roads of Scotland when I travel Scotland. And I see so often people referring to getting together with like-minded people. Above all else, listen to people who aren't like-minded. You know, we want to be respectful of each other when we challenge each other's opinions and when we debate and so on. Go outside the silos and take control to the extent you can of your career. Don't count on anyone else to do it.
I know, and I totally love that. And all I would say, those of us that are I mean, I charted my own career. I got off my own backside, moved it along, moved across sectors, and I did certain things to help that along the way. But when leading something like EPAA, and I can only speak from me personally, what's happened on my journey with the UK, and I'm like Paul, I don't consider myself to be a leader, but I guess I am some sort of activist. I don't know. But I have definitely been a proverbial punch bag for the EA profession in the UK when for a long time now. This has gone on for a long time, and people have expected me to fix all the woes and problems of their careers, and And I say to people, you know, much of what Sheila's just said now, but I said, look, I can go out and do things, but I was very clear when I opened EPAA, I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to shake things up. I knew that there was all this tech coming. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I knew we didn't have this connection with HR as a profession, and I just haven't ever really had the support. And I've, yeah, as I say, I've been a bit of a proverbial punch bag. So when you see me out there advocating and I'm doing something that you consider to be a little bit offside and that's not the norm, I would just like people to just for once just trust my madness, that I'm doing things very, very deliberately. Like I've got an inroad into UK Parliament about this profession in the last couple of weeks, and I've done it completely differently to how I did it with my CEO when we were advocating for disabled people. And that was the traditional route we had to go years ago. I'm doing things differently now. And I'm a spokesperson in the UK. I don't speak globally. I'm not a global leader. But I don't think we can continue doing things as we've been doing them. I don't think we can continue having the same conversations that we've been having, frankly, now for 10 years that are getting exhausting for everybody. Some EAs, I will say, are not really, if they've been cocooned in a nice, well-paid job and they've kept in the same company for the last 10 years, they won't have been exposed to this. They'll have seen the LinkedIn posts from people who have, but they won't really understand what it feels until you get back on the job market. That's when you understand, okay, we're not in Kansas anymore. You know, it's completely different. I should have done that in an American accent then, but then I would be insulting Valerie there. But you know where I'm going with it. So what I want to kind of finish off with in the last 10 minutes, I did another post on LinkedIn. It was early hours of Saturday morning a week ago, insomnia, and I was saying, let's normalize the fact that EAs and admins might actually want to leave this profession and transition into something else. I was expecting the normal industry pile on. I've got quite resilient to that now. And that's what I was expecting, because that's when I've tried to raise it in the past, everyone's jumped on me. But that's not what I got. And this post is still getting comments and likes now, and it's had some huge impressions. I don't think this, listen, I bought into this as a career for life. I was completely wedded. I thought I was going to be in it until, you know, I was pushing up daisies. I didn't want to own a small business. That wasn't on the bingo card, but it's happened. You just don't know what's going to happen in life. But I'm speaking to the millennials and Gen Zs and the focus groups. They don't want to be in it for life, but they want to have a good career for the time they are in it. And what I found is, and the reason what prompted my post was an EA put in a Facebook group that she wanted to transition out of the profession. She felt it was time. It was a very articulate post. She was asking her peer group for advice, and that's not what she got. She got a little bit of a pile on. She got some weird and wacky answers, and then some were deeply offended that she could even think about leaving life as an EA. And so I just kind of think, well, we kind of need to be a bit more supportive of people doing this now. We need to stop flogging the career for life to everybody, because that's only going to be a small percentage going forward. And I just think, well, we've got other people coming into our profession from other professions as well, which is evident in the EPAA membership. So can't we just get a little bit more with the times and just accept that this is happening now? Do we really need to put down EAs that are trying to move on? And it's not onto better things, it's just onto the next stage of their lives. Throwing it out to you.
Vic, I think the one thing that I always say to people in training is I respect both paths. If you pick this and you think this is me for the long haul, that's brilliant. If you are in it, but you don't know for how long, just make the most of it. Use it. You are getting management training for free, very expensive management training for free that will set you up for the next opportunity. Just don't be one of those people who float in and out. You know, it's like those people who all of a sudden, I don't know if it's the same in the UK and elsewhere, but those people who wake up one morning and now I'm a real estate agent, you know, just do it professionally while you're there. But I do think it's a great jumping off point for a younger employee, because you really get access to people that, I mean, other people in your team don't have access to. And you don't always learn, you know, the right things. Sometimes you learn what you don't want to do when you get into that job, but it's valuable management training. So I honestly think we should get to that point. It's not unique to our profession. It is a trend. Younger employees do not stay with a company for life, with a specific path for life. So let's just accept that we are the same as other professions, other careers, you know. And I think maybe if we had a little bit more inclusion there and a little bit more acceptance there, younger people would come in. But I think this is one of the barriers.
Paul? You're on mute again, Paul. You see, he's a Teams guru, folks.
I've just got to the stage in life where I don't care what people's opinions are anymore. I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, so we all had to think in the same way. I had to believe in God. I knocked on doors. I've now become an atheist. I've lived the most conservative life you could never imagine. And I've done things you could never imagine as well. But you know what? At the end of the day, I just think everybody's got their rights to their opinions. There's different people in the industry. Some are in it for the glory. Some are
Glory in this career?
Oh, yes. Look at me. I'm a leader in the industry. Some people love that.
I'm talking about assistants.
I get what Paul's saying.
Okay, I should stop talking, I guess.
No, I got what you were
just
saying.
I just get to the point where it's just like, you know what, you got your opinion. I got mine. Yeah, we might agree. It doesn't make any difference how I feel about you. It's just you got your opinion. There's some people I want to hang out with. There's some people I'd rather not hang out with. So I just get to the stage now where there's so much going on in the industry. I just think I just want to pay my mortgage at the end of the month. That's where I'm at most of the time.
I think in general, it's people that are insecure about something get easily offended, and sometimes they get offended on behalf of other people who aren't even offended with what's said. That can happen. You know, I just like, I think changing things to attract more people to the job. Like, if a job needs to be done, somebody will be found to fill that role, you know. And I do think it is a trend of Gen Z. It's not just for this career or profession. So, you know, I like, there's always trends that are changing all the time in business. And I think what's also very key to remember is how influential you are when you are working at the management level and the executive level. And just change your mindset. Instead of waiting for someone to come and tap you on the shoulder and say, I'm going to send you on this training course, I'm going to give you a pay rise. Don't expect that. You know, just don't have that expectation manual around that. Go after it yourself. Realize how influential you are. Empower yourself. Like, what have you got to lose? That's, you know, that's what I always think as well.
I think for me, I took a lot of heat when I've told a lot of people my story as I went into the industry knowing that I wanted it to be a stepping stone. I went to Google, I interviewed and said, I'm going to be your best admin. I won't be your longest admin. I ended up staying for 7 years and never thought I would try to build something called more than an admin, but I fell in love with the career. And I tell a lot of people that as long as you respect and value what an assistant does, if someone wants to have be in the career as a stepping stone, I think that that's okay. I think it's also okay to be it for 100 years if you want to. I actually really dislike when assistants pressure people to stay in the career, because what ends up happening is people sometimes honestly suck at the job and then they hurt it for all of us, or they are miserable and hate their lives and come to someone like me and speak about how people are being so nasty to them and they feel so guilty to leave, and then again they get bad at their job or when I've had this story happen over and over again, especially with young assistants who, again, they, for some reason, a lot of people don't want to be an assistant maybe for their entire life, because just like I tell everyone, we support CEOs and leaders who a lot of times will go from being in marketing to sales to being a CEO to being a CTO, and we support them through that. And we should encourage, if someone wants to change their career, to change, because I know a lot of people that ended up coming back as an assistant because they missed it so much. And so I really always say to people, lead you to where you want to go. Something that I think that I could talk about in another call is, I really believe, especially in the US in the last maybe 10 years, is the whole girl boss movement and being, you know, women being into the workforce and everything has actually hurt the assistant community. Because what I find a lot of times in books is people will talk about, they started off from the bottom as an assistant and then became a CEO. And the way a lot of times women entrepreneurs talk about assistants in their former careers, if it's something beneath them, I think that this is something that's really hard. Even my boyfriend was saying, his mom made a comment about being a stay-at-home mom and being an assistant and about someone else. And we're talking about that, how sometimes, again, it's women who look down upon other women who are assistants. And so a lot of young people do not want to be an assistant anymore because they want to be liked by their counterparts. And a lot of, I'd say, men look at, you know, if someone is straight, a lot of men don't sometimes respect the role. So a woman wants to be something else. So I think there's a lot of issues in that. But again, I think that at the end of the day, I want people to be happy in it, whether it's an assistant forever or an assistant for a day, as long as they're being a nice person, they're contributing, they're being their best. That to me, all that matters. And again, that they speak about the role with respect. And that's all I care about. So that's my spiel.
Well said. I think no one needs our permission or anyone else's permission to do what is authentically them. I think that we all need to know our values. And I'm someone who was spent almost 30 years total in the career. I stepped away from it highly intentionally because my values shaped my priorities, made my choices, happy with them, went back in and came out to do what I'm doing now. And I don't know, maybe I'm a Gen Z by a different name, Gen Z or Gen Z. I think the thing is, we can categorize by generations and demographics, and yet that's all it is. It's a generalization. You have to do what makes sense for you in your life. And again, that goes down to what are your values, and those shape your priorities, and take it from there.
I mean, listen, if I become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom one day, I will absolutely be attributing that to my grounding as an EA. No, I've often joked, actually, I'd like to see a few more EAs in politics because the state of the UK at the moment, as Paul will know, we could do with some stuff sorting out. But no, I've absolutely loved being with you all this evening obviously for the UK, and you know, just getting some different views out there, listening to what's going on in other countries. I just want a little bit more realism in this industry because I think that would better help and serve our population and also help them build up resilience as well. I mean, look, it's been a rough few years. We know that we've had the pandemic, cost of living crisis, there's all sorts going on, and yeah, I know people are feeling a little bit fragile, but at the end of the day, bills have to be paid at the end of the month, and that's when you draw it all back down to basics. You can, you know, it's have I got the ability to pay my rent, mortgage, bills, and there's nothing wrong with saying that and helping people, you know, to navigate through that, and also having a great career. But you know, sometimes, I mean, people say to me and they look at Michael, oh, you had such a great career. Well, it wasn't always great. There were some real trouble spots in it, some real tough times to navigate through. You know, and I did get through it all, but that's, you know, different tools and tips and tricks and resilience and bits and pieces. But I hope that I loved what Mallory and Paul were saying about the tech. What I'm hoping is that we can start to get, I don't want to say in front, but it just seems like we're running a slow marathon here to catch. I think we need to be a little bit faster on that as a profession. I really do, and how we tackle that in a more efficient and effective way. I haven't quite got my head around. There's a lot to digest from tonight, but hopefully we can all work together.
Mallory, can I ask Mallory a question? Mallory, do you think assistants are going to need to become specialists as opposed to generalists in the future, or not? With the way technology is going.
Good question. I don't have a strong opinion, and I don't tend to just speak to speak. I think it's really just going to depend on industry and who you're supporting and whatnot. I think that that's what's really hard about our industry in general is you can speak to someone from Google and you can speak to someone from one team at Google and then speak to another team, and it's completely different. And so I'm not sure, but that's a very good question that I'm going to now noodle on for the next couple of hours. And if you have your take, I would love to hear.
No, I don't know. I don't know, because assistants get things done, which is they do lots of things and require lots of skill. But will some of these tools become so good at generic stuff that we need to become more of a specialist? I don't know.
That is in my presentations. I've been saying it for 8 years that every EA needs a specialism. And that's because part of it because I did it to protect myself during the global financial recession, but also, Paul, you mentioned it earlier, and we can finish off on this, but at the end of the day, look, listen, with all the best will in the world, you can skip into work, do a fantastic job, but the bosses are looking at the bottom line. A lot of the time, they're so cost obsessed, they just can't see beyond that. And at the moment in the UK, and especially for next year, they are going to be looking in earnest. Now, I was on an online networking meeting with about 80 British business owners last week, and most of them are making redundancies because they've been light of the new taxes that are coming in for employers. And one of them said something. He said, I've been through my entire workforce and I'm getting rid of good people. So they come in, they do the job, they're not doing anything wrong. They're not, taking the mick in any way, but they're not extraordinary. So there's no like massive value. They're just doing the job they're paid and contractually meant to do. And he said, and that didn't make him feel good, but that's what he was going to have to do to survive. And so I think at the moment, especially for the UK, everything's going to be down to cost. Your boss can love you, think you're an excellent person, but I'm looking at the bottom line. How much are you going to cost me? And can you really, really articulate what that ROI is? And I think a lot of EAs do struggle with that. But we'll have to carry that conversation on. I'm conscious it's people's evenings. Thank you so much for those of you that have been with us this evening. I'm sure the conversations will continue back on LinkedIn as well, and we'll continue these panels. I think we need to keep up the conversation as much as possible. And
thanks for organizing it as well.
Yeah, and Paul, I hopefully I'll get to see you in person soon.
When you're ready.
Nice. It's been too long.
You're ready. I know.
Thanks, Vic. Thanks, everybody.
Have a lovely Christmas, everybody. And
Lovely
Happy
to
New
see
Year.
everyone.
So
Thanks.
now. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.